Hello, welcome to the Rezzed sessions here at EGX Rezzed 2019. Thank you so much for coming. I'm John, I'm from Rezzed, I'm just here to do the introduction. This panel is all about the craft of voice acting. I am not going to introduce the panel myself because I have no chance of retaining all their names, I'm sorry. So I'm going to hand it over to our host, Dave Gilbert of Wadjet Eye Games, who is going to introduce people and lead the panel for us. So please welcome Dave and our panel.
Hello. Okay. That's good. That's good. I guess, yeah, we'll start by introducing ourselves. We'll start over there.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, good. Throw me under the bus. I'm Amelia Tyler. I'm a voice actor, mainly for video games. Played Malady in Divinity Original Sin 2, and lots of other things, some of which I can't talk about.
Hello, I'm Jamie Zubairi, and I'm also a voice actor mainly. I'm in various things also, which I can't talk about, one of which is coming up next month. So yeah, excited about that. But yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Samantha Bayard. I am in the unique niche of sci-fi, fantasy, audio, comedy, drama, which means lots of things with Big Finish, so Torchwood, Doctor Who, The Master, things like that. And I did things like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Neverwhere with Neil Gaiman. So I'm things you've heard of, but you probably haven't heard of me. It's an interesting position to be in. I've done a couple of games, would love to do more, so please say hello afterwards.
Plug.
Right here. Pass it on.
Yeah, I'm Sally Beaumont, and none of my projects are under NDA, so I'm going to tell you all of them. Probably best known for Bertram Fiddle and doing weird and wacky comedy voices. And I promised that I would do a plug for Dance of Death, Dulac and Faye.
Yes.
Both me and Amelia are in, and we can finally talk about. And that came out today.
Oh,
Buy it. It's brilliant. I'm a rat in it.
And I'm a shouty political activist and a very, very cockney prostitute. Oh yeah.
But what about
you have no? You're laughing. You don't even know.
But what voices do you play?
How do I follow that? I'm Dave Gilbert. I am not an actor, per se. I am a designer. I've been doing point-and-click adventure-type games since 2006. We're known for, I'm going to forget some of them, the Blackwell series, Shiva, Techno-Babylon, Gemini Rue, Shardlight, Primordia, and we just released Unavowed last year. I'm not a voice actor myself, but I have worked with a lot of voice actors. My games are very narrative heavy, so it involves a lot of voice acting. So I've done about 16 games over the last 13 years, so I'm not a professional by any means, but I've done a lot of it. And so for the kind of tack I'm taking for this panel is not about how to be a voice actor, but it's more for folks like me who work with voice actors on how to be a better director and how to work with voice actors well. So I'm going to start with one question, and that is, what is something that that directors have done to you that you wish they wouldn't?
Hang on.
This is the whole time.
Making us parrot lines.
Because working with voice actors,
line
they'll just talk the whole time. It's
No,
wonderful.
you're right, line reading, where they make you parrot it back.
Yeah.
And they're never as good as they think they are. And
No.
you're parroting back a very bad line reading. And it's
Plus, if you're trying to like replicate what somebody else has told you to sound like, you're not in the character's headspace.
Yes.
You're kind of like outside behind your own head, listening to yourself, and real people.
Wait, so you mean the
don't talk like
director
that.
is actually saying the line and you
Yeah,
repeat
and,
it?
Yeah.
and in one of the games I did all of the lines.
That sounds incredible.
Every line. And I thought it was just me. I got really paranoid about it. I was like, oh, do they think I'm just bad? And then I heard from a load of other actors on multiple different things going, no, that's just what they do.
I would say that it's not always a bad thing if I've been stuck.
Yeah.
You know, when you start getting frustrated
when you get
with
in a
yourself
loop.
and you go, I don't know what you want.
Yeah.
But I think to offer that on the
Please
first,
use your words.
just let's all be happy and just I'll do it the way you want, honest. But to begin with that, to begin a direction with a line reading is probably not a good idea.
No.
Or sometimes there's a panel of people giving you slightly different directions.
Yes, and it's like, who's in charge? Who should I be listening to?
Who's paying this, and who can I listen to? You know what I mean?
You do kind of need a no captain, my captain moment. I think that like one-on-one, you are the person I will look to for my final direction.
Yes.
Ideas are good, chuck ideas, but generally it's more like a don't tell me how to sound, tell me how to feel. And then trust that I can translate that into what it needs to sound like.
Yeah, that's really good,
Yeah, I think as actors we want to know what we're doing and why we're doing it, and I think that's the sort of language we use. Really.
And where we are.
Yeah.
That always helps. Like, am I at a funeral or on a battlefield? Because it's going to be different.
No, that was going to be my answer, that it's context. Not giving me context is the one thing that I can't really cope with, because everything is different depending on where you are and who you're talking to and why. And you know, we were talking earlier about some lines are presented with no context at all, and some of them were supposed to be whispered, and some of them were in a very loud space, and it really wrecked the game in the end. That it sounds, I am whispering to you right now.
I'm supposed to be hiding.
I am hiding. Do you think they will see us?
Y'all making me feel like a much better director, but now I can tell you something where I screwed up that I shouldn't have done. Mainly that I love telling the story. There was a game I did several years ago called Primordia, and there was this one character who was a wonderful actress named Sarah Male, and my wife happened to be videotaping this part of the session, so like I saw where I screwed up, where she literally had one line, and I'm like, okay, there's a bit of history behind this line. Sally mentioned too little context. I literally gave her 2 minutes worth. I'm just rattling on and on, like, this happened, this faction is against this faction, and they killed this person, blah, blah, blah. And I have this video of Sarah just kind of nodding, looking at her phone. And because I'm facing away from her, I'm at my desk. And finally, at the end of it, she just said, so my sister was killed, and I think this person was involved. I'm like, yeah. And I could see her face just go, on this video, just go, and then she did it perfectly. Like that's all I realized. That's all she needed. Why didn't I just say that? Could have saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
So
turning the question around, I think what makes a director really good can be that ability to condense a piece of very complicated backstory or direction into something that just nails what you need to do. Like I was once given Maggie Smith in space.
Yes.
And I'm like, I instantly know who that person is. Like, it's not going to be a Maggie Smith impression, but I know who that person is.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
I guess that leading into another one, we were talking earlier about how some of the actors that I continually work with and want to constantly bring back are the ones who just seem to magically read my mind. And for me, this is like, and they're all laughing because I'm on the other side of the booth, and I just see like, the example I always give is that there's this game we did called Techno Babylon where this character named Max Lau is just rattling off a bunch of technical terms in a very intense situation. And she just bam, 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 and she got it perfect. And without any context, without anything. And I'm like, I asked her, I said, did you understand anything you just said? And she just said, no. Was it okay? I'm like, it was perfect. She's like, okay, let's move on. And I found that like there's some actors I work with who just have this magical ability to just read my mind, and I always thought it's something instinctual. Is it something you just have, or is it something that can be taught? And I put that to you. Is that something a skill you can develop? And as a director, how could someone bring it out of you?
Yes, I think there's a thing. So I work in doing corporate voiceovers and explainer videos as well. And there's the thing where you're constantly talking about something, the way you're supposed to sound knowledgeable, but you don't know actually what you're saying. And it becomes a skill that you pick up what parts of the sentence are relevant and what words keep coming up over and over again. And you start to be able to say, well, of course, this is synergistic connectivity, and that's very important for our ROI. And you have to sound like you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No idea.
Yeah. Doing corporates is really useful for that sort of thing.
Yeah, it is.
I've done one about like oil rig platforms. I don't know anything about oil rig platforms, but they think I do. And that's all that matters.
And so it's partly about selling it, but it's context that with the example you were giving of all those technical terms, she didn't need to know exactly what each one of those did and why and what the backstory was. But she did need to know, does this character use this word a lot? Does this character understand what these things do? And then that informs how she says them.
I think in terms of something that's more fictional, perhaps, it's a combination of the information that's in the script itself and the actor's own imagination. And if sometimes if you don't give us a backstory, we'll create one for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully that
hopefully be the right one.
Be the right one.
Or sometimes we bring something new that you weren't expecting and you're like, oh, I'll have that.
Or it's being fans of the genre, because a lot of the time it's, if you're in the kind of like swords and sorcery, being a fan of that and knowing what the writer's kind of writing around, that always helps, kind of thing. I found.
Yeah.
But also the casting is important for that. I think if you get the casting right, usually that person has been cast in that role because they just instinctively get that sort of character. And if you play that kind of character a lot, if you play military or scientist, or you get used to that kind of pattern and the way of speaking.
I guess I have noticed that, especially with games that were in a long-running series, like my Blackwell series, the two main actors in the game, stars two main characters, Rosa and Joey, and the two actors who played them, like by the fifth game, like they knew it, and they would often tell me, like, no, like Joey wouldn't say this. Like, this is not a very Joey line, or what have you, and they just feel it eventually.
Yeah.
And I know you have a reoccurring character. I'm sorry, I'm pointing my thumb at her, and I'm meaning to point at her, because for Hitchhikers, you've done random for a long, long time.
I love random
right?
so much.
So do you ever find and also you've done Malady for 2 games. Do you ever find yourself in that situation where you're like, yeah, like random or Malady just would not say this, they would do this differently, or and how do you normally handle that type of situation?
Well, I'm dealing with the work of Douglas Adams, so I suggest
so,
to say it.
So I suppose in that case, if you had a line that you're like, random would never say that, then you have to look at... You have to look at why is random saying that?
Yeah.
Why is this such a departure for the character?
Yeah.
Stroppy teenager, that's essentially the role.
You do it so well.
Thank you, darling.
Yeah, Malady's a strange one, because the writers at Larian are just so good at writing that character, and I'm really glad that they let me play it the way that I thought it should be played. But bringing it back, we've only done, what can I talk about? We've only done a tiny bit of recording for Fallen Heroes so far, and a lot of that was for the trailer. So a trailer version of a character is very different from how she would be in the full game. And so it was very strange having had like, 2 years gap between playing this character in the game and coming back in and doing it again, but this time full performance capture and the trailer version of her. So I had to kind of tweak what her purpose was within that trailer, because it needs to sell something rather than be her, because she's very downplayed. And I'm up against epic music. That's a tricky balance to strike. But generally, I mean, the writers get her, and I think now that I know them, we've kind of got a relationship where we feel like this strange family that's birthed this odd demon child.
Kind of build the character together.
And so they write with my voice in their head, and I'll get weird little messages on Twitter just like, I'm writing her now! I can hear your voice in my head!
It's the best feeling when I know who's going to be voicing the character, and I know how they'll say things, I know the ways that they say the line, and I can just write to that. It is the
But
best
that's why early casting's so cool, because you can kind of start forming that relationship and write with a voice in mind.
Especially with reoccurring characters. So if I ever do an unavowed sequel, I have them down.
It's a great compliment for the actor as well to go, well, this was written for you, and now it's really easy for you to just do what you want with it.
Yeah, but getting that phone call, getting to come back for the second time, because I always convince myself, like, my last job is my last job. Like, I've used up all my goes. And getting a call back to, like, Malady's coming back, like,
they found us out.
I guess the one thing about video game voiceover specifically that I always found very interesting compared to other voiceover like cartoons or even narration, obviously, is that it's probably the most grounded and like realistic type of VO you can do. You don't get a lot of wild, cartoony stuff in video games because it would get annoying pretty fast because games take a long time to play.
That's what I do.
That's what
I'm really annoying, though. You're right. Yeah, so a lot of my characters are like little tiny NPCs that will pop up for 3 lines because you couldn't endure that for too long.
Yeah.
And it's the same with meeting me.
Even in
But yeah,
Rock and Faye, which I haven't played yet, but because that's a very grounded. She's here. I just saw her walk in. Can she talk about it?
Some of them are very big in small doses, and some of them are small in big doses. So
I don't think you'd want to hang around with Violet for too long.
no.
She tends to like start a normal conversation and it becomes a Marxist rant. I don't know. I'd hang around with Charlotte though. Cockney prostitute. She's great fun.
Yeah.
She's party.
Yeah, it is a naturalistic, more naturalistic style,
Yeah.
I guess is what you're going for.
Well, yeah. I guess the point I was getting at was that I found, especially with video game voiceover, there's a lot of it. It's like, it could be 10 times as long as a regular film script or anything else. There's a lot of it. There's a lot to get through. And you don't have the context for every single line. And what amazes me about some of the actors I've worked with is how they're able to just, because everything's out of order. It's like, here you're really, really angry at someone, the next line you're in love with them. And it's just this ability to just like change that on a dime and still have it be, clear as a bell and perfect and read very clean. Like that is something, basically, most of my questions are how do you do that? But how do you do that? And is that something a director can help you with?
It's emotional dexterity, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of being able to
Yeah,
flip
it's all at the
like
top
that,
of the
constantly thinking
top
and
of the
changing.
surface.
It's
Yeah.
psychotic when
Yes.
you do it. It's like, how am I doing this?
Yeah, you can't
Yeah, I
think
know,
about
I
it
know.
too hard, otherwise you'll go, this is such a
Yeah.
weird thing to be
Yeah.
doing.
I think living in imagination land
Yes.
helps. Like
Yes.
all those what ifs in everyday life. Like, what if this situation was different? How would I behave differently? And then bringing that into the booth, I
Yeah.
guess.
And I think it's just practice as
Yeah.
well. And the more you do it, the
Yes.
easier it is to access as well over
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, you live in your own kind of VR world. That when you're voicing a game, you're kind of seeing everything that's happening around you and seeing the person you're talking to and imagining what they're saying back to you. And it's this whole magical play world that
Yeah.
you go into. And it makes complete sense that sometimes it chops and changes because that's just what play is like. And being open, being playful.
Yeah, and it's not unique to voice acting.
No, you're right.
It's something you do in theatre a lot, particularly theatrical exercises where the
Yes.
scene might feel a bit dead. You pick some really extreme, what they call actions, which is doing something to the other person. It can be quite physical in the rehearsal room and a bit psychotic to watch. But all that is all in the actor's toolkit. So it's something we sort of try and hone, I think.
Well, I know that, I don't know if this matches your experience, but I once attended a workshop with Jennifer Hale, and who's amazing, she's wonderful. But one thing she made a point of saying, we all went into the booth one by one, and like she just sort of, she'd give us this dialogue. It's copy to read that. It's just like insane. Like you're some space overlord ordering minions, and you'd read it in this theatrical voice. She's like you're never going to be this person. You're not going to be a space overlord. But you can. Sorry, Sally. I just crushed her dreams. But you can envision yourself being in a position of power where, let's say there's something, and she would say to whoever's in the booth, she's like, all right, think of something that you want more than anything, something you really want to achieve. Now, don't tell me what it is, but now here comes this person who is preventing you from getting that. Feel that while reading that. Yeah. And it's that weird, like what you're thinking, but you're thinking one thing, but reading another. Yeah. And does that kind of match your experience? And because I've worked with some actors who don't have that connection, and I try to get them there, and it's hard. So how do you guys get there?
I think that's where actors are very much split. Like some people will want to draw on their own experiences, and some people won't. I'm kind of in that latter category where if I'm not able to give you that read, it means I'm not in the character's head enough. I don't want to be thinking about me. When I'm in the booth, I'm not me. But between takes, I'm me. It's really bizarre psychologically. But as soon as we're going for a take, that's not me. That's this character. And if I'm not in their head, I won't give you the read that you need. if that makes sense.
How does the director
Like-
get you there in that
Yeah.
case?
Sort of given, we call it given circumstances in theatre. So it is me if I had lived through the
Yeah.
unique circumstances of this
Yeah,
person's
yeah.
life, and then it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like I have to draw on something potentially traumatic. Or
Using
anything like that.
you instead of the character's name works really, really well. Always just like, okay, so it's dark. Painting a picture like it's dark. You've been walking for miles. You're exhausted. Your sister just died, and you think this person's responsible.
Yeah.
And they've been your best friend since childhood.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
And so
Paint.
that kind of sentence
Okay.
is a
Yeah.
great
Right, I
springboard,
see.
by the way. If you're looking for like a way to like set a voice actor going, that
Yeah.
sentence you just did was beautiful. And I'm like, I want to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes good directing is getting out of their way.
Yes,
And
I will
just
agree with this.
sort of giving them a little like push, and then going, I want to see what you do, rather than
The best thing
asking
I've
them to do
ever learned to
technique.
do as a director is shut up. Like it's so tempting to just interrupt them constantly, but I see they're in the zone. This is why I like directing face to face. I see they're like concentrating, and I'm like, they might get something wrong, and I'm tempted to I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna let them, I'm just gonna let them go, and then when they're done, we can go back and redo a line or two. But it's like when they're in that zone, like that's precious.
Yeah.
You do not want to break that.
Yeah, and just going back to that sort of juicy, push me, pull you thing that you've noticed.
Juicy.
The juicy push me pull you.
Yeah, that's what we call it.
That's the talk at 9 p.m.
But
tonight.
in terms of what you're doing to the other person, if you can find an opposing thing, so you think, okay, so I think you've killed my sister, but I feel responsible, then that is a drama. That is
Yeah.
something.
There's
And a good
conflict.
actor will do that themselves.
Yes.
So that's when you go, oh, I don't know how you did that. And then maybe if you've got maybe someone who's not so experienced, you might have to help them a bit with that.
Yeah. So yeah.
I just want to check on the time. How much? I wanted to leave some room from Q&As. How much time do we have? Is there anyone in charge who can tell me?
Anyone?
No one's in charge, sure.
I'm not quite sure when
we've
this
done 20
ends.
Oh gosh.
Is it a half hour or an hour?
Oh, it's not an hour.
I think it was
45
I don't know.
minutes. Split the
Who's got a
difference.
program?
Sorry? We got- how much time?
Right.
Oh, we got
Oh, wow.
plenty of time. All right.
Okay.
All right, I better
So-
think of a question then.
Yeah, so
Right.
I was gonna like ask questions. I'm like, no, wrong
ahead.
wrong hat on. No, just
All community.
that. Jamie, do you find that you want a director to get involved in your technique, or do you want to be left alone to like, yeah?
Well, a little bit of both, really.
Okay.
It should be a dialogue. I like to think. With the directors I've worked with, it's kind of something that you want to know that they're having as much fun as you are, because it's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
But so if you know that you've got a good rapport and that's working, that's more important, I find, rather than getting in the way of my technique or
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
The best actors I've worked with are the ones who are really having fun.
Yeah.
Because like there's some who come in and they're great, or they're super professional. They just walk into the booth and they're just ready to go. And I'm like, so what's up? Like, I'm fine. Let's go. And it's like, oh, okay.
Oh, no.
Let's go. And they do it perfectly,
Yeah.
but it's like, I don't want to work with them again. It's like, I want to enjoy myself. It's like, I'm here,
Yeah.
you know, I'm stuck in this booth for like this room all day. I want to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
And like the ones I tend to bring back over and over again are the ones, even the ones like, even if they have a small role, but they sell the crap out of it,
Yeah.
having fun, I'm like,
Love
I
that.
want to work with you again. And then the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
project I do, I'll like give them the lead because I just love working with them so much. So
Yeah.
it's like, there's no such thing as a small role, really.
No.
And
I
I imagine
think a
you all
lot-
got your start in similar ways.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get in their own heads about voice work. Like they'll get in a booth and feel like it's a test or something, and like, no, I've got to be amazing. I've got to give them something they're not expecting, and they're just overthinking it rather than remembering what it felt like when you were a kid and you were just playing make believe.
Yeah.
Of like, just like, here's a situation. Let's see what happens. If it doesn't
Yes.
work, we'll just erase that tape.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fine. Let's see what happens.
Particularly with digital technology and stuff, we can just
Yeah.
do many.
Yeah.
And my role is always to just throw out a bunch of weird stuff, and they'll keep the stuff that works, and I don't need to worry about the stuff that goes in the outtakes reel or whatever.
That's what blooper reels are for.
Mainly
Yeah,
swearing.
exactly. They're brilliant. This idea of it not being like a finite resource that you have in you, that you have to give
Yeah.
this one perfect take. Your idea is just to put out a load of stuff, and some of it will land and some of it won't land.
Yeah.
And that's one of the really lovely thing about it that I like, is that you can be really generous and say, hey, I've had these ideas, blah, and then we're going to keep that part of it. And nobody ever knows about the other stuff.
But it's so much a result of the dialogue between you and the people on the other side of the glass. You're kind of, especially when you've never worked with them before, you're figuring out a way to talk to each other and this common language.
What makes them laugh, what makes you laugh.
Yes, that's really important if you make each other laugh, even if it's a serious game.
Yeah. Oh,
especially when it's a serious
Especially,
game.
actually, yes.
Especially when you're killing thousands, you know.
No, so, yeah, working on Dulac, one of my characters, her baby is taken from her. I'm trying to not give away spoilers. And we were recording remotely with Jess on the phone in her office. And I'm like screaming and like rending my flesh because my baby is gone and I'm also supposed to be blind drunk at the same time. And I get to the end and there's this big pause. And being like a needy actor, I was like, was that okay? Was that sort of what you were looking at? And Jess kind of goes, yes. I felt things. It's amazing feedback. I was just like,
I can't talk about my favorite line from Dulac and Faye because it's like
spoilery.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it, but yeah, it's hilarious and ridiculous, and I can't believe I got paid to say it. Like, a lot of the script was like that, actually. Yeah. Just that entire. All the sessions for that game, because they're quite, going back to what you were saying earlier, they're quite big characters, but there's an emotional realism at the heart of them.
Yes.
And when you start digging down into characters like that, you start seeing below the surface of those stereotypes. It's just so juicy.
I don't know where I heard this metaphor from, but a lot of video game voice acting, especially, is like a close-up camera. Like when you're this close to the mic, like if I'm angry. Like, you're going to tell. You can tell.
Yeah.
You can't hide.
Yeah. Trusting the camera to see
what you're feeling. A lot of realistic voice acting is about what you're not trying to let it show. Often, like, when you get someone who's like, okay, you're angry, and they start yelling and ranting. It's like, no one talks that way. You don't. If you're just naturally angry, you're not going to scream. You're trying to keep a lid on it.
Again, that conflict you were talking about, where I'm full of rage, but I know I can't express that, and that's really interesting to play.
If an audience is watching me cry, they're not going to cry. If they're watching me trying not to cry, then they will cry.
It's so true. That's the instinct. When you want to cry, you're like, don't cry, don't cry.
There was this wonderful story I had once. I told you this one before, of how there's a game I didn't write or produce, but I did the VO4. It was a game called Kathy Rain, and the woman playing Kathy Rain, again, I keep referring to the same actress. This is, again, the woman.
She's great.
Yeah, she's great. But she did this scene where, I'm not going to spoil the context of it, but yeah, she's crying. She's really upset. She's learned something horrible about her family, and she's like trying to keep a lid on. She's like, get a lid on yourself, Kathy, and she's like really emotional. And then when she was done, it was like, I was kind of spellbound, and I just pressed the button. I'm like, Ariel, that was amazing. And then she looks at me, she's like, just acting, whatever. I didn't mean it, it was just acting.
I didn't mean it.
And I'm like, fine. Like, sorry, you're a professional. She could just like, just pull the emotions right out of her sleeve and feel them really intensely, and then just shove them back in when she's done, when she needs them.
It's the shoving back in that's the hard bit sometimes. Like, you could easily go off the rails. There was one game that I recorded last year. Like, I think I talked about this in the last Rezzed session, but right in the height of that heat wave, playing a character in Pathfinder Kingmaker who is mentally really going through some stuff, and she's snapping back and forth between what she's feeling. Recording that in a heat wave is not fun. It was an amazing script, but my God, I had to go to some dark places. And afterwards, I spent about a week just like, why am I feeling really unsettled? Why do I feel like I need to go and sit in a padded room? And I just hadn't been able, I hadn't had the energy to let go of it all and kind of do some weird self-care. I don't know, I'm still getting on top of how you do that.
You actually reminded me of a question I wanted to ask, because you once told me that story, and you told me how you recorded that from home.
Yes.
And so that is something I also wanted to ask about recording remotely versus recording in a booth. Because I prefer recording in the studio, because they all record from the same microphone. And also, one of the actors in Unavowed recorded remotely. And it's funny, you talked about recording remotely for Dulac and how they reacted to something. I had a similar story where the character was doing something really emotional, and my kid was like climbing on my lap and like playing with my computer. And I'm like trying, you know, and he's like, I had to mute the microphone while he was doing the line, and you know, he finished it, and it was this wonderful thing. And he was like, "How was that?" I'm like, "Eve, get off the." It was fine. Do the next one. And I felt the biggest jerk.
Like a knife.
Because I'm like, Eve, stop pulling my microphone. She already broke one.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, my kid was messing around. Like, I was like, because you want to like make your actors feel like they're doing a good job, and especially when they go through that, like they're going through like a mental, you know, hell to do that. Yeah, I apologized. But that leads to my next question. What are your experiences working remote versus in the booth? Do you prefer one or the other? And what are the challenges with both?
I would always rather record in the studio with the people that I'm working with, so I can see their faces, so I don't have to do any of the technical stuff, and I can just concentrate on the acting.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would always much rather, but I understand that there are some projects where that's not possible, or like with Dulac and Faye, it was 50-50 for me. I did some of it from their main studio, but then there were pickups, and it was just,
I get it, yeah.
It's very useful for
You know, so it's
you don't want
handy.
to spend all that time and money for like 5 lines.
Yeah.
I get it. I do the same thing.
I did a game called Age of Wonders 3 a couple of years ago, and that was mainly monologues. So it works really nicely from home, and it's very intimate. It's that sort of camera close-up sort of shot thing, and it was great. I could just, you know, it was Triumph Studios, are in Europe, and it was just really nice, and that was all done. And then I did a game called Nelly Cootalot, The Foul Fleet. It's downstairs, you can totally play it.
Good.
Darling. Where we had to do lots of comedy voices, and it was written by a comedian. And I think if we'd not been in the room together, the mix would have really suffered, because you've got the timing issue.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. So I
Is
think
Alistair there as well?
yeah,
the
Alistair
writer,
was sort of pretty much directing it. And for that day, we were happy to have some line reads, because I know he knew how every line. I mean, the guy's a stand-up. He's a successful stand-up. It's like, do you know what, mate? You know what you're doing.
Do it.
Yeah, you do it.
There's always an
It's
exception
on
to a
you.
rule, isn't there?
Yeah,
Sometimes somebody just comes along and like, oh, this is
So
your
I think
style.
what I'm saying is it's context as usual. And some of the stuff I do, I mean, Torchwood, you got John Barrowman's in the States, and then by the time it comes out, I've forgotten I wasn't in the room with him. I mean, since we have done scenes together, it'll be interesting to see how that actually fits.
Archer is done that way. Everyone's
Wow.
separate, and you wouldn't
Really?
believe it
Yeah.
when you watch it.
Yeah.
It's like knife-edge timing.
And I guess for the director, that's practice, because you know the directors aren't the best actors, and they pull these amazing performances out, and you go, "How did you?" It sounds like they're in the room. Like,
That's the magic.
That's
Really
teamwork.
good actors. That's why.
really good.
So we have 15 minutes left, I think. I guess that's a good time for me to do work and have, if anyone has any questions. How does this work? Should I? All right. So if I answer, I just yell.
Yeah.
I can kind of
Lean in.
Hello.
Hello.
Can y'all hear me?
Like
All right.
Oh, this is so intimate. No. That is the
They
thing.
don't want to see how it's made.
It's the thing we were saying earlier. Actors have no shame, and we're actually very gregarious, and we love other
Yeah.
people. And then we work in a tiny padded room alone.
And then we wonder
So
why.
sad.
And then we go
What
with.
is your question?
Right, so for new aspiring voice actors, do you have any advice how to get your foot in the door? Should you start working on personal projects, or where should you apply? These sorts of things for new aspiring voice actors.
It depends if they've done acting training or had any experience with that. I would say always start out with like the ground level basics of stage work, screen work. Do like improv classes.
Much
Those are
improv.
amazing for games.
And listening, a lot of listening.
I was gonna say, I fell in love with audio work from, I mean, I was lucky enough to be from London, so the BBC, like Radio 4, would record a lot of things and have open audiences, and like from the age of 16, 17, like from the age they would let me in the room, I was going to watch, and it was never with the thought in mind that one day I would do this. It's just I had that passion for
That's
it.
really
So
cool, yeah.
it's all well to tell you how to do a voice reel and that, but I think if you don't have that passion and learn from other people as well, I think that's really important.
And copying.
Definitely
Copying.
mimicry,
But not on your reel, just for practice.
Yeah.
Just for practice, yeah.
I did hear some advice on Twitter the other day.
Oh, wow.
It says, no, it was the funniest thing. It says, it was a casting director who said, no client has ever asked for an impression from Simpsons or Family Guy. Take them off your reel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
But some of the best character voices come from like a bad impression of
yes,
so and then adapt it.
That is a thing that I sometimes have to do, is that I sometimes do a bad impression of a male character, and by the time it's gone through my larynx, it's not really recognizable as like Boise, for example, later. And that can be a way, just like exploring how different people place their voices and what they're doing, and just mucking around and playing.
Yeah, and not just like vocally, but like facially.
With your face, yeah.
Like for my Maggie Smith in space, I'm like this.
Doing a face.
And she's suddenly got all this. I look like an idiot, but it sounds fine.
That's pretty much, yeah.
Get used to looking like an idiot.
Yes,
it's my main advice.
Look like an idiot.
Yeah. Begone shame.
No shame.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, how do you as a director look after the actors in the booth when they're doing efforts? Because efforts can be really grueling, all the grunting, screaming, dying sounds. And do you kind of leave that towards the end of a session, especially if you have a lot of words to get through and then you have all these emotes to do? Just wondering how do you...
Just gonna lean in.
Should I? Well... leaving it to the end. Although it depends on the actor. I had one actress who just had a weird way energy worked with her. Like she would prefer the, she tends to have less energy at the beginning, and as things get, she tends to have more energy at the beginning, and then so she wants to get it done with. Because as she progresses, she has less energy, and then when we do the exertions at the end, she's just tired. So she's like, let's just do it. And fortunately, it's more of a, the character was kind of very, not a very intense character to start with. So that's just how she preferred to do it. But most of the time, I had this with a recording with an actress I worked with recently, where she just was like, yeah, let's leave this to the end, please. And so I just copied and pasted it to the end of the script. So then when we got there, we're like, oh, we've got these to do. But in terms of looking after them, I found that a lot of actors, especially when you have a main character who's in there a lot, for several hours at a time, day by day, they look like they're gonna faint, but they swear they're fine. And you could just tell because they get so loopy, they laugh at everything.
Oh no.
I've been there.
Yeah, and I just say, okay, all right, go. And she just laughs. I'm like, what was so funny? She's like, nothing. But then she just focuses and does are you okay? I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, why don't we take a break and walk around for 5 minutes, and then I'll give you some water. And you just got to be aware, because they want to do a good job. Yeah. And a good actor is also aware of the time, because they, some actors take longer than others, but it's been my experience, they're not going to stretch it out so you pay them more because they want to be hired again. So they want to get through it as much as you do. So no, I'm fine, let's do this, let's get through it. You got to be aware. If they're having trouble, if they're about to die in there, take care of them. Yeah.
It's a surprisingly tiring thing. So just, keep an eye on them.
And give them water.
All the water.
Just give us water.
But not too much, as I discovered recently. If you take too much water, your tummy starts going, you've been voicing for 2 hours, I shall sing you the song of my people.
Oh, no, that happened to me yesterday. It was very embarrassing.
First of all, I wanted to say thank you for doing this session. You guys are just, your empathy and joy for the job is utterly infectious. I'm a voice actor as well, and I want to work with every single one of you.
Make it happen.
Come and play.
But what I wanted to ask you is about the way you make connections between directors, casting directors, and the actual cast itself. In terms of some situations, you get cast via agencies or agents or via websites or via direct contact. And I wondered if you found some experiences are better than others, or whether, from a director's standpoint, whether you find you get better cast by finding the cast members yourself, relying on a good casting director, or whether you prefer to just hear everything and pick very specific people from the job. So from both sides of the coin.
So I also work as a voice casting director, so I'm kind of placed to watch it. So for me, there are so many voice actors, and they have such varied skills that what I want to hear is something specific. We were talking earlier that both of us started with niche bits of our career, and then those titles have allowed us to spread out and show our range doing different things. There's an old casting joke that nobody has a folder marked versatile. We're always looking for a specific character. So mainly what I want is for you to have paid attention to the brief and given me what I've asked for. I know that sounds really obvious. And you do start to kind of, I recommend every voice should do some casting just so that they're on the other end of it and they can receive dozens and dozens of reels that don't have what they were asking for, and like hours of recording and things that aren't useful.
Yes, so I was asked to do half the casting on Nelly Coutelot.
Oh!
So I asked my friends from Hitchhiker's Guide. And that was it, because we knew like the late Sue Sheridan was, she was also noddy. You know, she was Trillian, she was noddy. She could do,
I love that.
She could differentiate between a boy's voice and a girl's
Yes.
voice.
Wow.
And so
I do
instead
those,
of going through tons of reels and saying, well, we don't even know if they're going to be okay in the studio, we don't know if they'll be so funny, I knew these people have this pedigree that they can just absolutely nail it.
Recommendations from other people, having worked before.
Yeah. So we all were playing like 4 to 5 characters each because I just knew they could do it. So it was, from an actor's perspective, it's a nightmare. It's like you've just chosen your mate. So that's essentially what you've just done.
But there's a reason you want to work with the same people over and over again. And
I do it all the time. I'm guilty of that, because if I like working with someone, I want to work with them again.
And casting's a pain.
Oh, God.
From what I've heard from my dev friends, it takes a long time, and your ears want to bleed. And if you find people you like, you kind of want to play with them more,
It's much easier if you meet somebody like here and you just like them and they can do it. You're like, that's job done. Right.
A classic casting director mistake, that I made way back in the beginning, was when I would listen to someone's audition, or I'd listen to their reel before I listened to the audition. I'm like, wow, this is really good. They have an amazing voice. And then I hire them on the spot just based on that, and they come in, they can't act for crap. They have a great voice for like narration or for commercials or for whatever, but they could not emote, and because they're not usually called upon to do that, they have a specific skill to do this one thing. And that's something, whenever I hear a reel, someone asks me, what do you think of my reel? I'm like, I want to hear you act. And that's so important.
But being able to take direction as well, because a lot of people that I know who've cast just from an audition or from a reel, that actor will be very good at doing what they would naturally do. But if you ask them to change it to fit some element of the game or just tweak the character, they have trouble doing that.
It's so much nicer when you are brought into a casting situation and you get to meet, you get to meet the people anyway, because hopefully they'll bring you back. But also you get to be directed by them, which I think is always, it's always like, okay, am I going to have 16 hours of this over the next couple of weeks? Or is it going to be fun? Or
it's kind of like speed dating, right?
It's very like speed dating.
Going through the auditions, like one thing that's very important, as someone who, I usually go through a casting director, but I occasionally cast my own stuff, and you have like, if it sounds from the beginning like you recorded it on your phone in your bathroom, I'm not listening to the rest. I have 300, 400, 500 of these to go through, and if like the first thing I hear is something awful, I'm not going to listen. I'm just going to go to the next one.
You do get really fast.
First impressions really matter. Often you make snap decisions because you got so many of these to go through.
I'm afraid this is going to have to be the last question. I'm going to hand over to this gentleman because he's had his hand up for ages. But you can come up and chat to them in person after it. I'm sorry.
Cheers, thank you. I just wanted to ask the panel, how do you find the scripts for games? Like in other mediums, the scripts have consistent formats. Do you find with video games that, like as a writer for games, there's no standard format? I put things in spreadsheets, others don't. Is that a problem? Would you prefer to see a standard format of script?
There's no standard format whatsoever.
Thank you. Exports the script differently.
Even on the game that is about to come out. I recorded it in another studio because they were they thought they were having a March release. So everybody was piled into the main studio, so I was recording in town, my character, and it was a completely different format to the studio, and I was like, okay. It took me 3 minutes to get used to, but then after that, you're like, okay, right, let's get on with the thing,
Because sometimes you'll go in and it will literally just be a spreadsheet of your lines. And you're like, but what comes before that line? Like, who am I talking to? Where am I? Please give me information.
I once exported a script that was literally copy and pasted from the code, because it was like lines that I had forgotten, and I'm like, oh crap, copy, paste. And it was like a mess. I'm like, the line's in there, you'll see it. It's horrible. So, yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to how this is done.
So legibility is really important, because you're caught up in emotion and you're probably picking up a line and then performing it. You're reading quite fast, so making sure things are clear and legible and understanding context is probably more important than the format.
Yes.
And as you say, we tend to kind of roll with it and whatever format you go in, but just try reading it yourself is a classic, and see how easily...
Punctuation's important.
Punctuation is so
Especially
important.
when you're sight reading. I can always tell when I'm like halfway through a sentence and the punctuation's not right, because I'll slightly slow down and not be sure what I'm saying.
I can always tell the ones who have been doing this for a while, because they'll do that a lot. The ones who are new, they'll often read the line first, read it again, and then they'll say the line, because they're unsure. But the real veterans, they'll just go. They'll just read it, and they'll be halfway through. I'm like, nope, that's not what I'm saying. Let me start again.
I'm a bit like Ron Burgundy. I will read a question mark when there isn't. If it's there, I will read it.
Are we done? We are done. Thank you so much.
Thank you